Hi everyone, from me, Brent Graham of goodforthegame.co.za. Yes, it's playoff rugby this weekend. We got quarterfinals in the URC and Super Rugby. We got the final in the Gallagher Premiership, so looking forward to that one as well. I do enjoy playoff rugby, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into things. And to do that with me from Auckland in New Zealand, it's the Moss Man. Nathan, welcome back, mate. Good to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And yeah, you're right. So playoff rugby always interesting, and interesting from a betting perspective too, because it is a little bit different. The lines come out early, so the lines for this week's games come out sort of a day early on Sunday, and I think you probably sort of speculate what the reason for that is. So I think it's probably more interest from the general public in these lines, in playoff rugby in general. So the books probably feel they can collect more action by being up a day early. I think they're also less concerned about rotation and resting and these sorts of things, so they can feel a bit more confident in the numbers that they're putting out. And they've also obviously got a whole season of data to work with in terms of posting up those initial lines as well. So yeah, so it means the bookmakers are actually feeling a little bit more confident in their numbers as well. So yeah, it's probably in some ways as sharp as the numbers are going to get. So, as a bettor, I suppose you also need to be a little bit careful that you know where your edge is coming from.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I often judge things on the Good for the Game forum as well. It was a really quiet week on the forum. I mean, there were still people viewing the forum, but not a lot of comments, which suggests that the bookies have generally got the lines fairly spot on. And we'll talk about that as we go through. Just to welcome, first of all, we had two Irish guys, two Irish supporters coming in straight away. Mark and Chris from Ireland coming in. Mark saying, nice shirt. Yeah, Mark, I must say it's getting a little bit tight. I think it's shrinking in the wash, or at least that's what my excuse I'm gonna use on that one. And we got JJ in, Fareed, Werner, the Crow Tips. He's not feeling too well. He was thinking of joining us tonight, but he's sitting at home in bed. But yeah, I'm sure he'll have a couple of tips for us as well. So welcome, guys. Always good to have the boys in the live chat contributing. And let's get into the action. We'll start off with the Super Rugby quarterfinals. We got the first game. That's tomorrow morning, 9:05 South African time. Pretty stable handicap from what I've seen most of the week. Exactly where I captured the Chiefs minus 11.5. And we've got a points line here of 54.5.
It's moved a little bit. So there's been 12.5 out there. It's gone as low as 10 and sort of bounced back to 11. So there's a little bit of resistance on both sides. And you can understand why. So this is a game I would leave alone, or at least try and take a bit along, because as I said, there has been 12.5. Did see as low as 9.5 at one particular place as well. So I think my perception is that the Chiefs they've lost mostly to good teams. I mean, you could argue the Crusaders aren't a good team, but if you actually look at the points difference on the table, they're clearly probably a class above some of the teams that they're technically sitting with on the table, whereas the Reds away have definitely struggled. I mean, on their resume they've got losses to Moana, losses to the Force, to the Drua. So things that give me pause when I look at their away record. I think there'll be a bit of a narrative out there that looking at the Reds' recent record against the Chiefs, that maybe they've figured the Chiefs out, and I'd be keen for someone to try and explain to me how that works, that one team sort of has figured out one particular other team, but then can't do it against some of the lesser teams in the competition. So all that said, it's probably one that I would just leave alone. I do feel like the Chiefs have another gear that would take them above this cap if they can find it. They just haven't been able to sort of get that going this year. But at the same time, I don't trust the Reds in an away game. I think this is capped about right.
Yes, I mean, from a handicap perspective, as I said, I went 11.5, so very much in agreement with where it is. So I just want to spend a bit of time. I actually like the points here, and I like the unders. There was 55.5 when I saw it first came out in SA. It's edged down to 54.5, but I still think that's a play. I was having a look, and funny enough, these sides did meet in the quarterfinals last year, and it was 29-20 to the Chiefs. So 49 points in that game. And then I looked at the Chiefs, who, of course, made it all the way to the final, played all three of their playoff matches last year in Hamilton. And unders would have arrived. In fact, that 49 points was the highest scoring of the three fixtures. It was 45, I think, in the final against Crusaders, and something like 33 against the Brumbies or something in the semi. So, semi-final rugby, Hamilton, I had a look at weather. Doesn't look bad, but I always look at the humidity, and I see the humidity hovering in the 80s there potentially. So it could be a little bit greasy on the ball. I like unders here. I like under 54.5. But the bet I've gone for, and I've just put it up actually on Good for the Game, There weren't many bookies out with it yet, but I've gone under 7.5 tries here at 9 to 10 with poker bets. So let's say to lose, there's got to be 8 tries. If it's 8 sevens or 63, it was at 7.5. Yeah, 8. Obviously, they won't get every conversion. But my logic there is that the Chiefs have been one of those sides that do tend to take the 3-pointers early. And I'm expecting that to be the case again, obviously being a playoff game, and possibly the Reds as well. So you're under 7.5 tries is my play, but I wouldn't put you off the 54.5. Any thoughts on that, Nathan?
Yeah, I'd totally rubber stamp the under here. So I've modeled this at 53. We talked last week about this sort of trend late in the season, and it could be weather related or it could be pressure, but for games to go under, it happened again last week. So definitely, I think I'm already on 54 under 54.5. So yeah, I think that's a good bet.
I mentioned 55.5 on the forum, and yeah, see that it went by the time I did my preview. I just want to double check my bet. Yeah, Chiefs Reds under 7.5 tries there at 9 to 10. And yeah, so that's the one I fancy there. So at least we got something for the Friday morning, because quite surprisingly, I thought we'd have the 2 games on Friday and the 3 games on Saturday, but it's not the case. We've got the Hurricanes, a nice early start South African time. I think this kicks off around about 6:30 against the Rebels. A big handicap here of 27.5. And a points line that's also edged down. So 61.5 early in the week. It has come unders a little bit. What are your views on this one, Nathan?
Yeah, as you said, it's a big line, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation about the Rebels in their last game, and whether they'll be motivated and all these sorts of things. I'm not sure that it really matters. I'm personally I'm on the Hurricanes at 25.5, which was with the early number, but I think it could potentially sail over even this number. I've projected this out to sort of be somewhere in the 30s. So as I said, I just think the Hurricanes, I think, can sort of pick their number to some extent. I think all it will come down to is probably whether they take their foot off their gas at some point, but they haven't really shown a preclusion to do that at any point. So yeah, I think this could be another one where towards the end of the game, the Rebels might start thinking about where they're going to be next year.
Yeah, fair enough. And also have had a week or so now for the news to really sink in and hit them. So I was also looking at the points in this game, because I initially did think the 61.5 was a bit high, and I still think there could be a play at 59.5. Of course, the worry is that the Hurricanes could just absolutely cut loose. But looking at them this season at home, I think they've only once, I think their top scored home is something like 43. And in fact, overs at this line would only have arrived in one of the Hurricanes' home games this season. But that was against the Rebels early on in the season. I think there were about 70 points or something. So some contrasting signals here, but I think the unders could be the way to go. And funny enough, I've gone tries here again. This is not as confident a play for me as the Chiefs Red, because I'm not convinced that the Hurricanes will take the 3-pointers early like the Chiefs will. But I've gone here. There's a line of 8.5 tries, and I've taken 8 to 10, under 8.5 tries. What do you think of the points here? It just looks like one of those games. It looks too high, but with these two sides, it looks, you could certainly find yourself a 70-point game.
Yeah, this week actually was one where the total points numbers produced by the model that I'm running were really, really close to the point lines that I could see. But there was a 57.5 out there, which I took the over on, and kind of for the reasons that you said. Like, it's not hard to see how this could get out of hand, but it might be that it's actually the Canes points over. That could be a slightly better play. And the other thing to take into account is that this isn't a night game; it's an afternoon game. So I think it's a 4:30 kickoff, and I think we've talked about it before. We do sort of favour those afternoon kickoffs over the evening ones.
It does. I was looking at, and certainly does look. There's definitely going to be no rain about. Once again, I picked up the humidity, which wasn't ridiculously high. It was 80% on the forecast I looked at, which is just starting to get to the part where things can get a little bit sticky. But yeah, a bit of a nervous one, this, but I have gone under 8.5. Tries to see what Blake is in agreement with you there. He thinks the Canes points over is potentially the way to go. I think we'll have a line there of around about 41.5, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit higher. Canes all the way up to 35 points, says Fareed. Hat-trick for Riasi, says Stephen Marks. And yeah, the Crow Tips, this is a surprise. Brent opens up the show with back-to-back unders. Clearly, I've had a rethink on my strategy in the week, and I'm coming back a new man. And the Crow Tips is going Canes overs. The other thing I did look at here was potentially Rebels unders, but they are that sort of side, could pick up a consolation try here or there. And the quote, if I think, was about 15.5, so it was quite low. So, yeah, interesting one. I will be up and about for this game, I can tell you. Right, let's move on to the next one. It's in your part of the world, Nathan. We've got the Blues, minus 25.5 against the Drua. Points line here of 55.5. I've just started doing the preview on this one, so I've got a few views, but let's hear yours first.
We talked about the Drua home and away record, I think it was 3 weeks ago before the Highlanders game, which obviously was a game that the Drua got sort of smoked away. And then the following week, they did, and then they went home to the Rebels and then gave the Rebels a beating. So when we're talking about that home road split, that is actually increased from the time that we talked about it 3 weeks. So they're effectively they're two different teams really between home and away. So as I said, that split's even bigger. There's a lot of teams that when they play the Drua, they talk about not playing Drua ball or not trying to out Fiji. You'll hear them sort of say this. It's things. The Blues are really the exact opposite of that kind of team. They're a really big physical team. They like to go through the middle, which is the exact opposite of sort of trying to play Drua ball. I just think that, as I said, the Drua away from home, that this could be, another big blowout, 50 points, that sort of thing. My model's projecting 45, and I've probably mentioned in the past that it's not necessarily calibrated to be accurate in terms of the actual final score. It's in general, you want to be on the right side rather than sort of close to the line. Projecting a big Blues win here.
Yeah. And okay, so you're pretty much 100% where I am on that one. I was looking at the points. I was looking at unders on Drua points at 14.5, but that is a low quote. The Blues, though, defense has been so good this season. I'm a bit nervous to go unders here at 55.5 in case the Blues run right. And at the end of the day, I was just about to post it when I got a phone call and ran out of time. I'm going Blues minus 25.5. Yeah, I like them as well, Nathan. We're on this one together. I think they're going to run away with it. I was looking back at I like to look back at past playoff results and that this quarterfinal last year in Auckland against the Waratahs, 41-12 to the Blues. That's a 29-point win. I'm expecting probably more than that against this Drua side. So let's see what happens there. So Nathan and I align nicely on that one. We've got one more Super Rugby quarterfinal to get through. I haven't sunk my teeth properly into this one yet, so looking forward to hearing what Nathan's got to say. Brumbies, minus 13.5 at home in Canberra against the Highlanders. And we've got a points line here of 51.5.
Yeah, this one's come in a point towards the Highlanders after the team news came out, which I presume is probably based on the fact that James Slipper is out. There might have been a couple of injury additions from the Highlanders team for players that have been out recently as well. But in general, I don't see the kind of the logic behind that move. The Brumbies, actually, they have one of the better home field advantages in Super Rugby history if you went back and looked at the numbers. And Canberra is not an easy place to get to from Dunedin. It takes 3 flights. There's no direct flight from there. You have to go from Dunedin to Christchurch to Sydney to Canberra. You'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure you're talking at a 10-hour plus flight time or travel time to get there. So it's the equivalent of sort of traveling to South Africa. The Brumbies were a half-point favourite when this game was played in Dunedin, and that was sort of early on in the competition. And the Brumbies covered that one pretty easily. It ended up 6, but the truth is the Highlanders were down 9 and kicked a late penalty for the bonus points. So since that time, the teams have really gone in different directions, right? There was a lot of there's probably a lot of positive thinking about the Highlanders at that point in the season, which they've clearly not lived up to. And the Brumbies have proved themselves. I mean, they were literally come down to the last week and with a shot of finishing top of the log. So they've kind of proved themselves in the opposite direction. So I think adding all those factors together, I think the Brumbies is the right side here. I just think there's nothing really about the Highlanders, especially away this season, that makes you think you could trust them to cover this one. And I kind of think back to games where the Highlanders were away at the Reds, and I think that one finished 31-0. And that's the kind of scoreline that you could easily see coming up in this one as well.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the Highlanders have really struggled to score points this season. What do you make of the points line at 51.5? I see this is also edged in. When I first saw it, it was 52.5. I must say my gut feel was there, and this is another one, Chris. My gut feel was probably unders on this. Both of these sides for me are potentially sort of unders teams, and I could see a little bit of an arm wrestle at some stage in the game with possibly the Brumbies winning maybe by more than the handicap, but perhaps because they kept the Highlanders really almost scoreless.
Yeah, right on the line. So I'm projecting 51. And as I said, when I looked at the numbers for all of the Super Rugby games this week, they were all almost right on the number, which in some ways kind of gives you confidence that what your model is doing is correct, but it doesn't give you necessarily a lot of leeway to find an edge.
No, exactly. It's always that thing. Like when I handicap the games, there's a big difference. I've then got to think like, is this actually a game I should be steaming into because the bookies have got it wrong? Well, have I got it wrong? But when there is no difference, then it's kind of, well, there's nowhere for me to go now on the handicap. But that's the end of Super Rugby. We'll get back, of course, with best bets at the end of the show. Let's move on to URC, Nathan. We've got obviously 4 quarterfinals there as well. The first one Friday night, South African time. I imagine this would be a sort of a Saturday morning there for you in New Zealand. We've got Munster minus 15.5 against Ospreys, and a points line here of 55.5.
Yeah, in the US, when they talk about betting the chalk, which is a phrase that means sort of betting the favourites, especially the big favourites. And this to me is a bit of a chalky kind of a weekend. Like I really fancy all of the favourites at the moment. So yeah, I don't have a huge amount of analysis for this. It's actually interesting because I've not watched a single minute of URC all season. It's just it's not on TV here. It's not easy to find, and so I've just been betting purely based on numbers. And the URC's been like a really good competition for that kind of thing. So long story short is that I'm just projecting a number in the low 20s for this game. So I'm on Munster at 14.5, but obviously at the 15.5, I'm still like that.
Yeah, that's it. It's funny you say that. I mean, I know that you've told us before you don't get to watch those sort of games, but you actually wonder sometimes, is it actually better not to watch the game? Because, and I think we've maybe had this chat before, because you get influenced by, you watch half an hour of a game and you're kind of quite influenced by that. And it happened 3 weeks ago, and whereas you're looking at it purely, I mean, you're literally letting your model dictate to you. And the results suggest that you're probably better off sitting behind your laptop rather than watching the game.
I think yes, but I also think it depends on how you watch the game too. Because I think if you've got a bet on a game, you watch it in a completely different way. If you don't, if watching it without that, you're effectively just cheering for one team. And I see a lot of the comments from people, on forums and various other places where they just get so angry at the referees, like they feel aggrieved, it's the referee that's killed their bet and all these sorts of things. It's like, if you didn't have the bet on, you probably wouldn't be feeling that way. You'd just be watching it and say, okay, this is just the way the game's playing out. So I actually think if there's an argument to be, if rather than watching the game live, I mean, this depends. If you're doing it for entertainment purposes, absolutely, you sweat your bet, that's totally fine. If you are sort of a bit more serious about the betting, I think there's an argument to be made that you look at the result or you record the game, look at the result beforehand, so you know how it's going, what the end score is, and then look at it how it turns out, and see if you feel that score is a reflection of how the game went and whether it was a good or a bad bet. Because you can put on good bets that lose. There are bets where if the game was played 100 times, you'd still put that bet on 80-90% of the time because maybe you read it right, but the game just kind of random bounce of the ball didn't turn out the way you expected. So yeah, I think I think it depends on how you look at it. But yeah, you 100% do not have to watch every game. I mean, sort of interesting. Going back to what you were saying previously, because if you're you were talking about you being off market with the bookmakers, and I think in a way, it's not the bookmakers that you're off market with, right? If you've got a difference, it's actually the opinion of everybody else that's betting, because that's what's put that number where it is. So I think if you're watching a game, or what you're an avid watcher of the games, and you look at that and you say, well, I know better than every other person that is also watching these games and betting these games. It's quite a bold statement to make, right? So yeah. Yeah,
Unless
it was quite a
those
long
early
answer to
lines,
the question.
it was a bit different because the early lines, there hasn't really been a market formed yet, and then you can go for it. But I agree with you. Once the market's formed, and then of course the other thing was you say to yourself, you don't get many poor bookmakers running around, and I know the Oracle always said he's got a nice meme, and it's got like a whole lot of fish swimming in one direction, and one fish swimming opposite, and he said. And it says something like, what if I'm right and everyone else is wrong? But I hear exactly what you're saying because, when you get that many people that have got the market to a certain place, it's a bold statement to think that you're now right and all of them are wrong, 100%. Just one comment I wanted to go back to. Peter Paul, I think it was, you were saying super over USA v Pakistan. I was watching that. I was hoping Pakistan might get up for the win there. Peter Paul, let us know what happens there. I haven't really got into this cricket T20 World Cup, but that certainly looks like an exciting game. And let's just get Mark's comment up here. Munster should win well. And I mean, Leinster put 64 points on Ospreys 3 weeks ago. Yeah, Ospreys are a strange side. They played some pretty decent rugby at times this season, but I've actually gone for another unders player. I've gone Ospreys, under 2.5 tries. I just feel in playoff rugby, Munster dog it out a little bit. They're not a flashy side, and they'll be happy just to grind it down and keep Ospreys quiet. So I've gone Ospreys under 2.5 tries, and I think I got 9 to 10 on that line. Darren joins us, also been watching the cricket. Darren, good to hear from you. Look forward to your bets as well. We're busy approaching the halfway point of the URC. We've got a game in Pretoria, Bulls minus 18.5 against Benetton, and a points line here of 57.5. Very interesting this, because if 57.5, if this was a group match, I would probably bite your hand off for it. But maybe the fact that the playoffs means we've got to view it a bit differently. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I talked about betting the chalk this weekend. This is the one that I sort of feel the opposite on. So my number is right around that 19.5. So I'm not going to bet this as it stands. What I was really hoping for actually was that that this would blow out a little bit. And I did see like a juiced 21.5 somewhere else, which I think would be, a good bet on Benetton at 21.5. And it was something interesting that you said last week, because we were talking about home road splits between South African teams, away in this competition versus at home. And you kind of mentioned that it skews the numbers, the fact that teams don't send their full strength team to South Africa. And I wonder if that's something that's happening here. So, once you get to the finals and teams are sending those full strength lineups, that maybe the value is actually on Benetton, because past results would make it look like this is going to be an easy kind of win for the Bulls. But clearly when you get to this stage of the season, I think an away team like Benetton, they're going to be bringing it, and there's no lack of motivation or any of those questions which we usually have with some of these teams playing in South Africa. So I'm sort of leaning towards Benetton, but I wouldn't take the 18.5. I definitely want a better number than that. I think that 21.5 is obviously that mental barrier of sort of 3 converted tries. I think if it sort of reappears, or I can get kind of a non-juiced version of that number, I'd definitely be interested in Benetton.
Yeah, I must say, leaning in the same sort of direction. The Bulls are also one of those teams that have got a bit of a habit of switching off when they get well clear. And so there's always an opportunity if the Bulls do get 20 odd clear for Benetton to come back and score a few tries. But exactly what I was thinking as well, this Benetton side, I think when they were in South Africa last, they beat the Sharks, and then they did play the Bulls. They played was it the Bulls they played fairly recently? Sorry, I don't have the fixtures up here, but I think they're almost. I've got a feeling that this is going to be a different Benetton side. I just don't know how to approach it. Because like you, I don't think the 18.5 is probably the way to go. And I'm looking at that points line going 57.5 at Loftus, even in a playoff game. I think the Bulls are going to come out firing. Benetton are going to score some tries as well. So I might be leaning towards the overs. But as you can probably tell, this is probably the game at the moment that I've got the least opinion on. Let's just go to the live chat quickly. Benetton on the +4 for Reed. Stephen Marks is on the Bulls minus. So we've got some division there. And Fareed reckons this one could go down to the wire, which obviously makes the plus a good call. But tough game this one. And certainly if any of you are going to Loftus, enjoy the game. Temperature's not too hot, should be about 18 degrees Celsius. Humidity is like 30%, so not a factor at all. It's an afternoon game. So I find myself talking myself into a bit of a points play. Right, let's move on to the last two games. We're also going to cover the Gallagher Premiership, by the way. Leinster, minus 16.5 against Ulster. Leinster doing the job last week with a weakened side beating the Handicap, and Ulster now 16.5 point underdogs. Points line 55.5.
Yeah, projecting this one at 18. So I did take the early Leinster number at 15.5. There might still be some 15.5s out there. So I'm on Leinster already at that number. At the 16.5. Clearly still showing some value leaning towards getting towards that 18. So yeah, long story short, I think Leinster's probably still the right side here.
Have you seen are the teams for this one only been announced tomorrow? I haven't seen any team new, but I'm imagining Leinster will go full strength on this one.
I don't think they have any reason not to, although they have sort of surprised in the past. But I think what you'll probably see is that it'll be somewhere close to full strength. And I know there's some Leicester fans that watch this, so they'll probably know better than me. But like there's players like James Lowe, for instance, who seem to play very rarely. They kind of roll them out on special occasions. So whether this is a special occasion or not, I think that maybe the story with James Lowe might be a special case, because I know even when he was playing with the Chiefs that he had arthritis, and he was kind of limited by that. So I wonder if they kind of hold him back from playing too many games across the season just because of that.
That's very interesting. I didn't know that story. Just looking at the guys in the live chat, Mark, and these Leinster guys, these Irish guys, are always pretty accurate on team news. And although we haven't seen it yet, Admiral also confirming Ulster have a number of players missing, and Leinster expected to be a full strength. Yeah, I like Leinster here. I think they'll beat the handicap of 16.5. Not going to touch the points line at this stage. Leinster also have a habit of getting the job done early in the game, and then sort of over the years, I've seen them switch off, particularly in the group stages. Once they got their 4 tries, they sort of go into a more defensive mode. So I do like them here to beat the handicap of 16.5. Crow Tip saying it's a pity because a full strength Leinster v Ulster is one of his favourite fixtures to watch. But it should still be a good one, Chris. Don't worry about that. Right, let's move on to Glasgow against the Stormers. I handicapped this game, Glasgow minus 3.5. That's where it seems to have settled. I think it did open around minus 1.5 Glasgow here, Nathan.
Yeah, it did. So I took some Glasgow at that number, also a little bit on the money line as well. And yeah, I sort of make this game in around 5 to 6. So I still show some value on Glasgow. And, again, that sort of home road split, I think definitely Glasgow is the right side here. And as I said, I think with the early number, being close enough to pick him, that I think, it's one of these ones where the money line players, well, for me, was the best option. And it just doesn't feel like a game where Glasgow are likely to lose this.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of support for Glasgow in the live chat as well. I actually, when I opened the rugby thread on the forum, I said, guys, please, someone do the newsletter for me this week, because whatever I put in there just gets stuck. I can stop a train. And Henrik actually came at that stage. It was minus 1.5 still available. He said, send the newsletter now. Glasgow minus 1.5. Lots of support there. I'm with you guys. I do like Glasgow to win this one. For Reed, he reckons Stormers on the plus. Glasgow cannot break down tight defences, which also brings unders into play then, I guess, for Reed. Glasgow to sneak it, says Darren, a 1-12. Come on, Peter Paul, who won the cricket there? Or is it still going? That's super over. Right, let's have a look then. We finished the 2 quarterfinals of Super Rugby and URC. Let's talk a little bit of Gallagher Premiership. This, like I said last week, I haven't been following it all. I think there were a few guys on the Saints last week. I think they played the Saracens. They are minus 5.5 against Bath. And we've got a points line here of 55.5.
Yeah, this number's right around where I made it as well, sort of around about 4.5. So I was kind of involved with Bath last week, but I'm going to stay away from this one in a way. And we talked about it earlier with the point lines, that if you get to the final and the number that your model is producing is right around the number for the line for the final itself, that's kind of not surprising. You would expect those things to converge further down the road you get into the season. Everybody's sort of worked everything out. Ratings are pretty accurate, those sorts of things. So yeah, I won't be getting involved in this one. I could sort of see the case for both sides. I mean, gut feel is probably Saints, but I just think what happens is that these games, especially when you get to sort of semis and final stage, they're always a bit tighter than what you think they're going to be. So, this could easily be, like Saints by 3. I do think the Saints will win, but like saying with confidence it's going to be either side of this line. I'm not really in a position to do that.
Right, well, I'm going to ask you to make a choice here, and obviously you're not going to get involved in this game. And that's when I said, if I gave you a choice and I said, right, you could either back either team to win by, say, 6 points or less. So in other words, none of them win by 7 points or more, or you could have Saints by 1 to 12. Which do you think would be the better play there, or can you not separate them?
I think, as I said, I think my gut feeling is probably telling me that Northampton is probably the right side there. Probably Northampton 1 to 6. Yeah.
Right, excellent. Because I was actually looking at that. I was thinking of that. That's just the sort of game where I won't get too heavily involved, but I might have a little interest at that level. Let's just look what's coming through the live chat. Northampton points seems high at 30, although they're a great attacking side. And Chris is talking about the Super Over. USA 19 runs, Pakistan yet to bat in the Super Over. Wow, I might just catch the end of that because the show's pretty much coming to an end. Darren Holiday reckons there's got to be match fixing involved in the cricket. Well, we mentioned Pakistan. Yeah, unfortunately, there's something we always have to take into account. Right, that takes us to the end of what has been a fairly short show. We've just gone over the half an hour mark, but of course, only 9 games to talk about, and just Nathan and myself in the studio. Nathan, wrap us up with your best bets, perhaps one in each of the 2 competitions. Or you could do more.
It's okay. I'm just thinking picking one out of the Super Rugby quarters is actually a little bit challenging, just because I actually do like the Hurricanes, Blues, and Brumbies.
Okay.
I think they're all pretty good bets. If I had to take one, I think it would probably be the Blues.
Right, but I'll give you 2 in the Super Rugby. No problem there. And anything strong in URC?
So I think the biggest discrepancy, I guess, that I'm seeing with my numbers versus the market is probably on the Munster game. So again, I do like all the favourites except for that Bulls Benetton game, as I said, sort of sitting that one out for the moment. But if I had to choose one, I think it would be Munster.
Munster there, you can get them. They were 14.5 now, 15.5. Glasgow best bets is Stephen Marks. Farid has come in. Reds, Benetton, Leinster, and Bath. Johannes is not on the show tonight, so no doubt he'll post his treble down in the comments. And let us know what you fancy if you're watching the show recorded down in the comments below. Yeah, I must say, looking forward to doing the news. There's a few bets that I like at this early stage. I do like unders a bit in the Chiefs game. In fact, I'm quite strong on unders in most of the Super Rugby games, thinking of a bit of an unders acca there on that. And after listening to you, I'm certainly leaning towards Munster there. And just the Bulls game, I'm really, really undecided at this stage. But anyway, got plenty of time to think about that. Nathan, great to have you on the show again. Just quickly, weather-wise in Auckland, are we looking at a fairly decent weather forecast for Saturday?
Yeah, it's going to be fine. I think all the New Zealand games are fine in Canberra as well. So yeah, no weather issues to affect those games. Excellent.
Very rare in New Zealand to have so little rain. I always used to say in the One World Cup that rain's never more than a few hours away in New Zealand. You can see blue sky, and before you know it, the clouds could come in. But Nathan, thanks very much. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining us in the live chat. I'm going to nip off and watch that Super Over as well. But great to have your company. We'll be back next week.